Welcome to the fourth video for the series Broken. Glad you decided to give this a watch. If you haven't watched the intro video at least, you should go back and kind of give that one a watch. It'll help you lay the foundation for where we're going and what we're doing in this series. But for this one, it kind of stands alone, but we just kind of want you to go back and watch that one. It'll help you out. We're going to be spending some time with a guy that had a very interesting life as he was a shepherd, kind of watching over sheep and other kinds of things, and then he kind of went up to being king, and then he kind of had a messed up moment that kind of sent his life down. But we're going to be spending some time with David today. David can be found in the Old Testament in the book of 1 Samuel through 1 Kings 2:10. His death is recorded in 2:10, and then Solomon takes over for him. So with that being said, we're kind of going to fly through his life and kind of look at some things. Once again, these videos and this series is not a extensive look at their life and every little bit of it. It's more kind of like just a flyby and kind of seeing some of the things that they did and then their moment that they had, but God still used them. So this kind of comes at a time where Israel had judges, and they were kind of ruling for them after people like Joshua and Moses. And then they didn't want that anymore. They wanted a king. They saw all the other nations around them and all the other people. They had kings. And what they wanted is they wanted just a king. And so they picked Saul. And Saul was this big, burly, warrior-type dude. And they thought, oh, well, he can protect us. He can fight. He can do what a king should do. But it turns out that Saul was just a pansy in disguise, and behind all those muscles, he was just a wimp and was hiding in tents and stuff when he should have been fighting. And one such incident occurs at that, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But Samuel then is instructed by God to go and find a new king. And this is where we pick up David's story. But God gives Samuel a specific instruction for finding this new king. It says in 1 Samuel 16:7, "But the Lord said to Samuel, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look on the things that people look at. People look at outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." So he kind of wanted him to start. We already picked one that had this outward appearance, this big guy, and he had this outward appearance that was appealing to a king, what Israel wanted. But it turns out that didn't work. So how about we do it a different way, and we look at something else. We look at people's heart. And so then he goes and meets up with this guy named Jesse. And Jesse had all of these sons, and he had all of these people. And David was out there watching his sheep. So Samuel kind of goes through all of these people and all of this different thing. He doesn't really know about David because Jesse's bringing all of his young guys and bringing all of his strapping young men around to try and be what they thought Samuel wanted. But Samuel already had this instruction, and he's kind of like, no, the Lord doesn't want any of these. Do you have any other sons? Oh, just David. He's just out there in the field watching the sheep. We didn't really think he's kind of scrawny and stuff. We didn't really think he'd be of importance to anyone. So we didn't think he could weigh in on this matter, so we just told him to stay out there. So we see in 1 Samuel chapter 16, once again, that Samuel encourages Jesse to bring David to him. Verse 12 says, "So he went for him and had him brought in. He was glowing with health and had a fine appearance and handsome features. Then the Lord said, 'Rise and anoint him. This is the one.' So Samuel took out the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. And from that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David." David then was going to become king in the future. He was still a boy at this time, so he wasn't going to become king just yet. Saul had to kind of still get out of the way, but he was going to be the next king. He was already anointed king. So he goes to visit his brothers. They're at war, or they're supposed to be anyway, but their leader, Saul, is hiding in his tent from this giant called Goliath that comes out and taunts Israel every day. And this story is accounted in 1 Samuel 17, and you can read that. I'm just kind of going to paraphrase it. So Goliath comes out, taunts Israel all the time. Hey, come fight me, come fight me. And David's like, you going to go fight him, or are you kind of going to hide here? And Saul's like, he's big. It's better for us to stay here. David's like, I'll fight him. Saul's like, okay, what should I do? to help you. Here's my armor, here's my sword. But David couldn't walk in the armor, he couldn't carry the sword. And so he's like, I'll just do it my way. And he kills Goliath with one stone to the forehead. And he cuts Goliath's head off. And so now he's kind of killed Goliath, so now he's kind of got some stroke. He kind of gets in with Saul, and then some things kind of happen. Saul turns on him, and it turns into that big kind of a big family drama mess because he's kind of friends with his son, and so they kind of consider him to be family, and it just kind of turns into this big, crazy mess. But then we kind of get up on, now he's been king for a little bit. He's actually king now, but we kind of see some traits of Saul showing up in David. As David now is supposed to be at war, but he's in his palace. It says in 2 Samuel 11, in the spring, at the time when the kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. So they went out and they fought and they destroyed many different people. And, David was supposed to be there, but he wasn't. And this kind of causes a problem. The next verse, one evening David got up from his bed and walked around the roof of his palace. From the roof he saw a woman bathing. The woman was beautiful, and David sent someone to find out about her. The man said, she is Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah. So now, kind of like, okay, well, bring her to me. The next verse, so David sent word to Joab. The next verse, says that they go after her, and they kind of like I don't think she has a choice at this point. He's the king, he kind of can do whatever he wants. They didn't have people back then. Now, king, we're not sure that would be a good idea, like we do now. He could do what he wanted. So, it happens, she comes back and finds out that she's pregnant, and then he's got to figure out a way to cover it up. So in verse 6 we see, so David sent this word to Joab, send me Uriah the Hittite. And Joab sent him to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked him how Joab was, and how the soldiers were, and how the war was going. Then David said to Uriah, go down to your house, wash your feet. So Uriah left the palace, and a gift from the king was sent after him. But Uriah slept in the entrance to the palace with all his master's servants, and did not go down to his house. Okay, so this starts one thing. So David's plan, you kind of probably picked this up. David's plan is kind of like, I'm going to hide my problem, and I'm going to kind of make it look like Uriah did it, and everybody will be happy, and no one will ever know of my mistake. So he tried this, and he kind of trips over, and when he gets up in the morning and goes out of his palace, and he's lying there on the steps. Well, Uriah didn't feel it would be nice to go spend time with his wife and to go hang out with his family when he's supposed to be at war. So David's like, okay, well, let's try it this way. So he gets him all alcoholed up, and he tries to get him, he has a party. And then he sends him down to his house. And he makes it to his house this time, but he still doesn't go in, and he still doesn't, be a part of what David wants him to do to cover up this problem. And so now we have this situation show up, and so now David's like, well, fine. Guess we'll have to do it this way. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. In it he wrote, put Uriah out on the front line where the fighting is the fiercest. Then withdraw from him so he will be struck down and die. That's real nice. So he's kind of like, okay, well, that problem's not solved, so he didn't do it my way, so I'll just kill him, and then that way the problem's solved. So while Joab had the city under siege, he put Uriah at the place where he knew the strongest defenders were. And when the men of the city came out and fought against Joab, some of the men in David's army fell. Moreover, Uriah the Hittite is dead. So now, that's the word that comes back to David after the deed is done, pretty much. After they did what he said. And so David gets word back. Bathsheba hears word that her husband's dead. And after all the mourning kind of takes place, David kind of sets up with Bathsheba as his wife, brings her into the palace, and kind of everything kind of goes on as David maybe had planned. And so Nathan shows up, this guy shows up and tries to talk with David. And after this conversation, David kind of realizes that he has a problem. David kind of realizes he fell into something. And in 2 Samuel 12:13, he says, then David said to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. Nathan replied, the Lord has taken away your sin. You're not going to die. So it kind of shows still the forgiveness of God. I mean, David had a lot of time with God. David had done everything God wanted him. David had been, the Bible says, a man after God's own heart. And he had been doing everything. But the punishment did come in verse 14 where it says, because you did this, pretty much, the son born to you will die. So it's kind of like Bathsheba's carrying your son, but that one's not going to make it. It's kind of going to be your punishment. His life kind of spirals out of chaos and out of control and just kind of gets all crazy. But David wasn't done yet. God wasn't done with David. And after the baby was born and after it passed, and David was comforting Bathsheba, and then they had a son. Solomon was born, and the Lord loved Solomon. And Solomon would eventually become the next king. But David had a rocky path, and this one incident with Bathsheba kind of just sent his life just kind of down and out, and he never really kind of got it back together, but he did have Solomon, and Solomon was a man of wisdom. The Lord loved him. But God still kind of set this up. Even though David still kind of messed up, and he may not have used David to his fullest anymore, because David just didn't get it together. As a matter of fact, a lot of the Psalms kind of show David's battle with this. Psalm 51 is this kind of forgiveness letter that he writes to God. But other ones are just kind of his depressive moments and things like that in Psalms. But I kind of want to look at Matthew real quick. As it says, this is a genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, and we already kind of looked at Abraham and his doubt and his problem with that and how he didn't want to believe God. But then it says in verse 6, and Jesse the father of King David, and David was the father of Solomon, whose mother had been Uriah's wife. So it's kind of like God still kind of used this. He put Solomon in place, and he continued the line that Jesus came from. The Savior of the world came from this kind of pile. And if you look at Matthew 1 and you read the genealogy of Jesus and you kind of look up each one of those names, Jesus' bloodline isn't perfect. By no means, Jesus was the only perfect person. But this kind of shows that God can still kind of make amends of something and still kind of build you up and still kind of use you in a good, great way.